Hey everyone, Ryan here at etrailer. Today on our 2022 Jeep Wrangler, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit. Before we do that though, let's check this out and just talk about why it's a good idea to use something like this on your Jeep. So whenever you're flat towing your vehicle, what can happen is the battery in your Jeep can slowly get depleted over time. And that's because when your supplemental braking system is operating, every time it turns on, it's going to draw a little bit of power from your Jeep. And not to mention too, nowadays, a lot of these late model vehicles will have electric assisted accessories like brakes, power steering, so on and so forth. And those are a lot of times really voltage sensitive and use power on their own and things like that. And every vehicle's set up a little bit different, but a charge line kit is something I recommend not only for the Jeep, but for any flat tow that I set up, because it's really, honestly, it's just cheap insurance to have the confidence knowing that your battery is going to stay charged whenever you get to your destination and when you're pulling it behind your motorhome. The way the kit works is extremely simple. So it's going to receive power from the 7-way connector on the back of your motorhome. And with those 7 ways, there will be auxiliary power to be able to hook up to something like this, right? So that power will come through. It goes through the circuit breaker to keep everything protected, and then runs over to your positive battery post. And so that's how it's going to keep the battery more or less trickle charged. With that in mind, this isn't going to bring a dead battery back to life or anything like that. Your battery will have to be in good working condition for the kit to be able to do its job. At the end of the day, it's really a no-brainer to use a kit like this. It's going to keep everything charged and one less thing to worry about. As far as the installation goes, really not bad at all. It's definitely ideal to do this at the same time that you're doing some of your other components, but you can do it whenever you want. If this is something you're going to be adding later, that's fine. But you mount up the breaker, run a wire to the battery. The other wire goes down to your 6-way connector at the front of your Jeep. That's really all there is to it. If electrical stuff really isn't your thing and you'd rather not mess with it at all, I definitely get it. You can always use our dealer locator network to hopefully kind of get you going in the right direction to find a shop that can help you out with it. But with that in mind, why don't we go ahead and get started on this now. To begin our installation for our charge line, we're going to be working here at the front of our Jeep, and we need to get into the back of our 6-way connector plug. With that in mind, this is a great time, to set up your charge line while you're setting up your diode wiring, since you'll have to be in here anyway. So very first thing, have access to that, and then take the red wire for your charge line, run it through your dust cover, about like this, and then we can strip the insulation back on it. When you strip the insulation, I'm going to be sure just to cut into the insulation and try not to remove any of the strands of wire there, but we'll give it a good twist, make sure it's nice and tight. And the terminal that we're going to be hooking this up to will be the center one. All right, so we'll take a small screwdriver, almost completely remove the set screw. We'll put the wire in there and try to make sure that the wire is completely in the terminal. And then we can tighten it down. And one thing that I like to do at the very end, once you verify everything is working, is come back, put some silicone in here, and of course cap that up and re-secure it. But I like to put the silicone on it to, one, help prevent corrosion. And I do it at the end because if we have any issues with the wiring when we're setting everything up, we have to get back in here for whatever reason, we don't have a huge mess to deal with. Underneath of our Jeep, this is our red charge line wire, so it's coming out of our connector plug, and it's just loosely routed now. Once everything's hooked up, come back and zip tie everything, clean it up. But this is going to have to go to the battery in our engine compartment, so I have it just running through here just having it pushed, up into the engine compartment. Your wire, this is where it's going to run into the engine compartment, and then you can mount up the circuit breaker. So with this, I just took a bracket and secured it here and kind of pushed it out a little bit. You can mount this directly to here, but it's kind of close to the hood, so that was my reasoning there. They give you some self-tapping screws, just secure it down. Then we'll remove these nuts here. You can take your wire and cut it to length. And when you do this, try to use every bit of wire you got, because if you don't have any extra that's of proper size, it's really easy for this to fall too short. So just keep that in mind. Route everything the shortest path possible and whatnot. So we'll take this, strip it back, twist the end, then take one of the small terminals, put that over the bare end of the wire, and crimp it down. Then you're going to put this over the brass colored post. It's labeled battery, so you might be tempted to do it the other way, but in this case, how the motorhome, the motorhome is acting as our battery, so that's why we're putting it there. Take the nut, go ahead and get that reinstalled. 3/8 size socket here. When you're tightening these up, you just need to make sure they're snug. You don't need to get carried away. And then you would take the rest of the wire that you had, from cutting it to length, and crimp on a large ring terminal and a small one. And the small one, of course, is going to get connected to the silver post. Now that we have this snug, we can route it over to our positive battery post. So I just kind of looped it around and over. And on these Jeeps, there's 3 terminals here. I'm going to utilize one that there's nothing going to it. And I found in the past, sometimes there's a factory nut there like ours has. Other times there's not. So it's going to just kind of depend. If yours does not have a nut here and you don't have one around the house or feel like getting one, you can always use, either of these. Well, work the same. But we'll go ahead and take a 12mm in our case. Remove it. Put the ring terminal over it. And then just tighten it back down. With that all wrapped up though, that's really all there is to it. So that'll finish up our look at in our installation of the Roadmaster towed vehicle battery charge line kit on our 2022 Jeep Wrangler.